And welcome everyone to another exciting journey on the energy that surrounds us. I'm your host, Michael, and today's guest I want to acknowledge is someone that I seen a short of their roundtable on Healerverse, which is an awesome organization. So if you're a healer or practitioner or, interested in any of the healing modalities, go check it out, healerverse.com. And I am going to stop, promoting all of this because our guest has such an amazing background and such an amazing story. I'm going to turn it over to her to share that with us. So I give you the one, the only meditation extraordinaire, Stasia Wysote.
Stasia Wysote. Thank you.
You're welcome. It was a shot in the dark.
It's okay. No worries. It happens a lot. So even with people that I'm pretty acquainted with, it continues to happen. So it's not a big deal. But yeah, thank you for the warm invite.
You're welcome, and thank you for coming on and sharing your story and your gifts with us.
Yeah, so my name is Stasia Wysote, and I facilitate guided meditations to assist with inner child work and shadow work. My main program is A Journey Within. And let's see a little bit of my history and kind of how I got into this, right? So I had a pretty rough upbringing, toxic home, a lot of child abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, just kind of like low education, low economics, my background. So that was a really difficult time. And then throughout that time, because I was so isolated on that part of my journey as a child and growing up, with that, I was able to cultivate a spiritual connection to God. So I think that was a big part of beginning a I don't know, like a random spiritual practice through prayer, because I was going through so much and I needed an outlet, right? So for me, that was prayer to God. And so as I got older, I began having different spiritual awakenings and different experiences. And it wasn't until 2017 when I had a really powerful and radical spiritual awakening that completely shifted and kind of forced me to follow the path. And essentially for me, like following the path is like, I heard the call. And so since then, I've been more committed to a spiritual practice for myself. And then eventually just kind of evolved into kind of using my experiences and my practices to assist others.
So you say in 2017 you experienced the call and that it kind of changed everything for you. Can you kind of share for people what you can about that and how the whole, how it as a whole impacted you? Like, was it well received at first, or, was it a hard transition from before and after the call?
Yeah, so it was really an intense spiritual awakening, the most aggressive I've had. I was listening to one of my teachers, and he was talking on suffering and compassion. And it resonated really deeply with me. And that teaching or that experience kind of, I guess some masters call it being touched by grace. So I studied with an Essene master in Patagonia, Arizona, Dr. Cousins, and in his teachings, that's the experience that I had, is being touched by grace. So basically, I just completely I started breathing and feeling really strangely all of a sudden in my body. And then my clairaudience kicked in, and I could hear like some sort of teacher or spirits around me that were guiding me, because I started to become really fearful because something unusual was happening that I didn't know what was happening. I didn't have words for. And as I continued to breathe under their guidance, I started to notice a separation between my energetic body and my physical body. And I turned into this light being. Like, one dimension of my physical being was a light, energetic body. And my head blew open like a crazy lotus flower, like a geometric, like so many petals, not like the traditional lotus flower, but like a geometric style, like lotus flower, like exploded open. I felt extremely orgasmic. And then I heard, she's resonating, she's resonating. And I completely shot out of my body. And I was pretty much, most of the light was like a bluish color. And this was really terrifying because during this experience, I was fighting between surrendering and accepting, but also being overcome with fear. Like, what the heck's happening to me? Because I'd never experienced anything like that. And most of my teachings prior to that were Essene Christian teachings. So they weren't into this more like metaphysical, like Hindu, like Eastern Asian, like that type of metaphysical teaching. So I didn't know much about that. So then after I shot out of my body, I found myself in complete darkness. And this part was so scary. My voice became like this primal voice. And I knew it was coming from me, but then these other voices around me, it was like I was like in the bottom of a cave of a council, and they were like, "Who do you serve? Who do you serve?" And I was just screaming like, "God," with this like very primal scream, not this voice. And eventually I was fighting. I was just in the darkness. And what I think, and my awareness of this experience is always evolving, even, almost 10 years later, because as my awareness grows and my ability to perceive that experience grows with it, as my consciousness is able to withhold that information. So I think at this time, what was happening is I was forced to turn on my own light. And that's what happened, is I turned on my light, and I think it was coming from like my liver area, which is really unusual. And I saw a bunch of like parasite type of worms, and they're like crazy teeth. And my light was like killing them all. And in that moment, I felt like a deep compassion for killing them, even though, like, on some level, I was aware that I needed to do that to move through whatever it was I was being stuck in the dark. And that was like really crazy. So once I turned on my light, I had heard one of the teachers or spirits or whatever, I think they were really surprised. They had essentially said something like, we'd never seen somebody like struggle so much. So I think at this, and so for me, this was like an initiation. And I've heard some similar stories of people being in these dark places and being asked, who do you serve? And then having to wake up for it and stuff like that. But so yeah, it was pretty clear to me that I was really struggling. And I kind of I surprised even them that I was able to get out of that. Right. And, which is not, at the time, like, I was living in Warwick, Rhode Island, right outside of Providence. I was working in a strip club that was essentially a brothel. If anyone's familiar with the sex industry in Rhode Island, it's pretty much prostitution no matter where you go. And I was working in like the high-end club, Desire. So I was doing a lot of drugs, drinking, selling myself, in and out of depression. I had just gotten out of a relationship with a narcissist who was like the son of like a pastor of all things. So, a lot had been happening at that point. So it was just like so much was going on, right? So obviously I had gone through a lot of like turmoil, and I had a lot of heaviness, and also like my spiritual constitute was waning because I was using substances off and on, and the environment that I was working in, So I was going through all that. So after I woke myself up, or like ignited my light, and that happened, like a blue, like Hindu god, like Vinesh or something, like Lord, angelic, crazy, terrifying warrior came. And this was really unusual for me because at the time I wasn't familiarized with like the Hindu deities and things like that. So yeah, that was really scary. And then they brought me to like Shangri-La or something like that. And they were guiding me to the steps, up these steps. And I was really scared. And I was trying to talk my way out of whatever trouble I thought that I was in. I was with these big warrior like gods, basically, or angels. And, I was like, trying to blame my parents because they were so shitty. You know, so I was like, I'm like this horrible person, like thinking like sex worker, partier, addict, whatever, because I had such a terrible upbringing. I don't know. But they said to me, they were like, we know who your parents are. And I was just absolutely terrified. And then that's kind of where I blacked out.
I could imagine.
It was a lot.
Especially if I'm understanding right, all of this took place all at the same time, or was this over time that
This
was.
happened like all at once.
Wow, yeah. Talk about overwhelmed. And talk about like that moment of the Matrix where it's like reality is unwailing, or not unwailing, what's the word? Deconstructing itself and showing you the real. Like, wow, that I talk about getting hit by a cosmic 2 by 12 or 6 by 12, but it sounds like you got a full on, like, oh, what's a good word I could use for that? Retaining wall railroad tie board.
Yeah, or being touched by grace.
Yeah. I'll, I'll be honest, when you said touched by grace, I'm thinking, oh, they're just gonna, take you where you are, and this light is gonna surround you, and you're gonna be like, oh, feeling warm and going in. And then when you described it, I was like, that was not what I was envisioning, but wow. And I do have to say though, I am impressed you came through and, you know, had the mindset that you had, because I mean, we all grow up hearing, everything that's put in front of us, we can overcome or learn from and achieve from. But yeah, I never would have imagined anything like what you went through. And I am in awe. I will say, you actually had me kind of speechless. I'm like, wow.
Yeah. I think what had prepared me was just the years of smaller spiritual awakenings and like things, unusual things happened to me throughout my life that could only be explained by like spiritual forces, and because I had that, I cultivated with some sort of relationship with God, with the divine at a younger age. Not that I was even fostering that really at that point in time. But I was doing things too. So, like, before that experience had happened, I was in and out of like non denominational Christian churches. I was in the community, I was doing community services, working with the homeless. So, it was like, on one aspect, I was going to a strip club, doing God knows what all night long. And then, like, a couple of days later, I was going to church and like helping the homeless and like feeding them and giving them socks. And one of the churches that I went to was really, I had a powerful experience prior to this awakening where we were praying for the community. And I left my body and I was like with this like little girl who was going through a tough time and she had been like abused and things like that. And my soul was there and I was like praying over her. But meanwhile, it's like in the church, we were all praying together and like we were all going out to the community. And the pastor there was former Pentecostal. So, he had a lot more open mind when it came to a lot of Christian practices and healing and beliefs. And, I I just believed it so strongly. And so it just happened. When I came back to my body, and I made a video about this too. So when I came back to my body, I saw these beings and my eyes were still closed. And I identified two of the younger girls were actually like, I want to say they were robots because they had like glowing red lights as eyes. But I don't, and they had like a skeletal structure, but it looked like a robot kind of, but they looked like, Abercrombie and Fitch, like pretty girls, American Eagle girls in high school, like very pretty. And that was, I knew spirit was showing me, like God was showing me what was, the possibilities and other beings and things like that. So that's just like one example. But throughout time, I've just had these little things that kind of prepared me for something that like that great that happened, that crazy, that wild. And for that year following that spiritual awakening, which to this day is still my most intense awakening that I've ever had. And that's what I refer to it as, these all experiences as spiritual awakenings. For that year, I was completely blown open. So my psychic senses, my third eye, everything, like disembodied spirits were coming to me. I was on the verge of spiritual psychosis. I thought that I was schizophrenic. I was really scared. But then I was like getting teachers like David R. Hawkins was coming and teaching to me, and he had moved on. And it wasn't until later that I fully understood that I was connecting with these spirits that had moved on. And they had also warned me what was to come. And so it was just a lot of stuff. Sorry, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole.
Oh no, I totally understand and respect that, and and I know about that rabbit hole, and so yeah, it's not a fun trip, but there is some insights that come from it, and a couple of things that have come to mind is I was picturing, like you were saying, when your head opened up and had all the petals. I almost wondered if it was like flower of lives that were appearing and opening you up. And so I don't know if you're familiar with the flower of life and the imagery of that.
Yeah, so some people call that the death daisy.
I have never heard that.
So if it's the same symbol I'm thinking of, I had a business where I was using like the seed of life as part of the logo in 2023. One of my friends, and he kind of, so I don't really know because I am basically his, and I don't know enough about it to have an opinion either way. But the perspective that he gave me were constructs to keep us in this reality. Like these were the prison blueprints that were keeping us energetically stuck here. But if you're, like this, are you talking about the circle within the circle within the circle within the circle?
Yes.
Yeah, so you have to look it up, but I don't think that's what it was. I mean, I don't really know. I think it's, but I don't know what perspective of the flower of life that you're talking about either. But for me, I think that was just kind of like that was being touched by grace, that whatever was holding me in that reality and that perspective and that limited dimension had cracked open. And like, so in this lotus flower behind me, in a lot of like Eastern traditions, like a bloomed lotus flower is like a representation of consciousness. So it's like my consciousness opened and allowed me to reach all of these, like the sea of consciousness essentially. But I'm not really sure. I haven't really spent too much time on it.
So the flower of life, as I know it, it's the sacred showing oneness, that everything is interconnected, everything's connected. I have to look to see about this being a death flower. Wow, you are blowing me away with that. I'm like, I am like, yeah, you got me like frozen mode. I'm like, what? But so, and the other thing I was gonna ask you though, kind
Oh,
of,
Daisy of Death. I just had to look it up.
uh, I'm gonna have to look it up now. But another thing I was going to ask you is, do you feel like, being, that you were having these little awakenings along the way to this big booming event? Do you feel like everything you were doing in your life was being like, I don't want to make it sound like you had no free will or no choices, but do you think you were being guided and led to do everything that you were doing so that when that moment hit, you would totally understand it and be prepared for it, and you would see what they were, showing you and understand it and understand you and not be seeing you as, oh, I am half this person of light and half this person of who knows what. That you are one whole person, that everything you did was for a reason.
I'm not sure about that, and I'm going to answer this the best way that I think I can. But I think that most of my awakenings happened a lot through suffering. So I was in such a low state, and like I was, when that awakening happened, I was deeply connected to like compassion and feeling the suffering of everything my teacher was saying that was happening to humanity. I felt it at such a cellular, like everything level, that I had like such like I just could feel I had deep compassion and deep sorrow for what he was saying, and I never really strongly resonated. When you see those commercials, or back in the day when they had those commercials of like of children in third world countries, like donate $1 a day and you could feed this whole family, something like that. So it's like having that feeling like 100x is what kind of happened. And I think that was part of the reason why I may have been touched by grace, because I had reached that level of compassion and just that pain and suffering. But prior to that, a lot of my spiritual awakenings happened when I was in my own suffering. So whether it was something that I had, experienced as being abused and had to disassociate to survive that experience, so suffering myself, or just other experiences where I was, having a hard time with drugs, affecting me after a couple of days, and the depression and things like that. So like having that type of suffering. So a lot of the times these awakenings happened through the suffering. It was almost like there was a point, like some sort of a turning point where it was like, am I going to continue to suffer? Or like there was like a flip switch. And I don't really know how that exactly worked for me, because I think it somehow happened at like a soul level. But then I have had some other like minor spiritual awakenings, like with that church when I was like serving the community, and that was another act of compassion. So yeah, it's hard to say. But I have kind of come to a place where for me, it feels like where my soul is, and I believe in reincarnation for myself, for sure, that I chose to go through these experiences so I could have these awakenings, and so that I could reach these higher levels potentially, but also so I could um, kind of like be a way shower for others. And I think that when I work with my ancestors as well, and I do feel a very strong connection that I'm also clearing my ancestral lineage, like the trauma. So yeah, I don't know if that answered you.
You know, I am noticing synchronicity at play here, because I can't imagine in reality what you went through in your experiences, but I've had my own, and it's like it kind of parallels, and it seems like to me it's what forges the way showers is. We're given these tasks, we're given these journeys that we go through, and we sit there and we wonder, why are we doing this, what is this about? and never get clarity. And then one day, like you're saying, we just wake up and we're like, and somebody goes, "Oh, thank you for, sharing this. It helped me with this." And you're like, "Oh, I'm a way shower." And this has allowed me to help be the way shower. And so it's kind of interesting and unique. And I also, though, I look at it too as it is really hard for us to communicate and explain a lot of things because of what we have been kind of like crucible forged through, because it's not, what we go through, you're at choice. You either surrender to it and continue the path that you're on, or you make a choice and step up and change it. And so I honor and respect the fact that you made the choice to rise up and change, and that is never an easy choice to make. And so I just want to point that out and honor that you made that choice.
Thank you.
With that being said, too, I wonder, as you talk about, doing these little acts of compassion, and I love the fact that you say little, because when it comes to acts of compassion, they're never little. Even though they look little, they never are little. They are some of the most life changing moments I feel on this earth realm. And so I wonder, as you look at doing these, acts, and doing, and how, nobody told you to do these. Nobody said, these will help you to do this, that you chose to do those. You even in your darkest moments, as you might say, chose to take time and say, I'm going to do this. And this, as you call, little act. And so to me, that's the mark of the way shower. We show up where we're needed. And so I wonder, if you have gotten to a point or have thought about, as you going through everything, would you be able to relate to people and be able to share this work if you didn't go through what you went through?
Um, I think that I it's kind of like, so when I was in my early 20s, I was in living in West Hartford, Connecticut, and I was paying out of pocket for this like therapist in West Hartford that was kind of like upscale, and um she was not really useful for me and what I was going through. Like, I think she was kind of used to more like people are depressed because their husband's cheating on them, or they've got issues with their kids. I think that my level of trauma was too much for her, and I tolerated a lot of unprofessional things from her, like her rescheduling with me all of the time. And it's like a normal therapist wouldn't do that, and I was paying out of pocket too. And so what I realized is, like, and I just wanted help so badly. I wanted somebody that I could talk to. And I thought, like, if I got this like affluent therapist in this nice area, but she did not have the life experience to be able to meet me with where I was at. She did not know what any of those hardships are like. And so for her, I think she just didn't have the capacity to absorb that. Um, And that's one of the things that for me, part of the work that I do with the inner child work and with the shadow work. And, a lot of it for me, and also with fear, like I'm still working through fear, but I've gone through so much trauma and so many traumatic things. And I've worked through a lot of that within myself, and it's an ongoing thing. I take breaks and get back to it, but I've sat with these demons. I've sat in these heavy spaces. I've seen very unusual things. So if someone were, coming from any type of trauma or anything that's traumatic to them, there's a certain level, a certain depth that I've been able to go, because I've been to these lower spaces within myself, within my own sexual abuse, within my own trauma, within my own family, within my own healing path. So, I can sit in rooms with people that have been strippers and drug addicts and were abused, and family incest, and sex workers. And I can sit in those spaces because I've had to, and that's where I came from, and I've been able, so I know I have that energetic ability. That's kind of working with like dragons. One of my friends enlightened me. I didn't know this about dragons, but he had told me that, they come from an angelic realm, but they go to the lower depths he said that the angels can't go to. And that's probably why I've been seeing dragons for so long. And I work with them spiritually and in my own meditative practice, my own protection for myself. Not that there's a whole nother thing on protection, so I don't want to get into it. It's just like higher level teaching. So like as you evolve on the level, in my experience and my beliefs in school of thought right now, as you evolve on the level of consciousness, what you would deem at level 1 of needing spiritual protection versus what you think you need at level 10 are two different things. But anyway, so I'm not going to go there. But
I know what you're talking about. I know, and so yeah,
and
I get it.
because we're all at these different phases, and I've been, at these phases, and I've seen demons, and I've had experiences with that, or, and yeah, so I've just kind of been through that. So yeah, so I do have that energy signature within myself. And I can sit in those spaces with people as they go through them, if that's what they need to do. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. It totally does, actually. And one of the gifts that I was given is being the way shower. And I've had it ever since I was a kid. And even my parents can't explain where I got it from. Is you drop me in a room full of people, and I will talk to them, and I will hear their stories, and I will this or that. But the one thing that was interesting to them is they would say, who did you talk to? I'd be like, well, this lady or this guy. And they were like, well, how would you describe them? They're a lady, they're a guy. It's like I didn't look at and determine, based on how they look, oh, this, or this, or oh, you're this, and this. It's like I just saw them as a spark of energy and moved on. And I always found it interesting when people would like share things with me and be like, yeah, and I had this, great inner wisdom, but I can't talk to people about it. Why? Well, because of this in my past. And I'm like, what does that got to do with anything? That's your past. The past is past. This is the now. You are now. And that is something, I wonder, do you have that ability, so to speak, where you look at people and you don't see where they are or what they were, you just see them as a spark here and now, so to speak.
So my judgment practice is still a practice, because I still do have judgments with people for sure. But yeah, I try. I think I think that's just part of the work as well. But I try to be open, but I also don't, like, I don't solicit my skills, my values, my thoughts, my beliefs, like in rooms where they don't belong. I don't try to convince people to learn about spirituality from my perspective, or to try inner child work or meditation. So usually I think when somebody's interested in that and coming to me, or I'm having that experience, I'm pretty open. But I will say something, if it's okay, about like when you've gone through a lot of trauma as a child, being able to speak your truth is a really challenging thing, because you were suppressed, or at least I was suppressed from speaking my truth. I was gaslit as a child. And also just, the fear of like, if you tell people, like, things are going to get much worse. So I think that's a part of, a dynamic that's also like important. Like, people, it's like part of the work for myself. And that was kind of some of the things that I've been overcoming within my own self and getting more comfortable, is like being seen. Because as a child, being seen meant I was going to be sexually abused or physically abused or shamed. And like, when I talk about shamed, I mean, I was really shamed. So my stepfather would spank me for crying. He would spank me. I was a bedwetter until I was like 12 or 13 years old. And I didn't know it, but a lot of that has to do with being sexually abused. So for a while, he would whip me at nighttime before bed to teach me not to wet the bed. And then he'd whip me again in the morning. And then he'd like make me pick a belt. And he would do this in front of my mom and sister. So it was like a shaming ritual. So a lot of people, depending on the experiences that they went through, like, you don't want to have this extra attention. And also, something that's really been coming into my work and my shadow work for the last year or so is like, I had to let my mother go, so it's like I had to let my whole family go, essentially, which is a really difficult thing. And it wasn't until 2024 when I went on my first ayahuasca retreat and I was able to really forgive my stepfather and move on from a lot of that pain, which, I mean, I still have to work through, because there was just so much, like, it's like super complex. It was all the time, right? So, but I've moved through quite quite a bit of it. And then it's like, once you think you're done, like, shit pops off. You're
Oh
like
yeah.
a whole new thing again. But one of the things that I had to is what happens on my healing journey is, through each layer, a newer level of awareness comes in. And so I finally became of the betrayal from my mother. And for years and years, my whole life, I couldn't see that until just a couple of years ago, because the abuse from my stepfather was so traumatic and so overtly bad, you know? So I couldn't see, the way she was treating me, because she, at the time, because it was like less, it wasn't physical, really, less physical. So and as I've begun like waking up to that, so then there's a whole level of like this betrayal wound. So then it's like, oh, okay, here's another level of awareness that, oh, it's difficult for me to trust people and confide in people, because I couldn't even trust my own mother, and I can just remember countless times of, or I started to remember countless times of betrayal, and her using me to protect herself, to make things less for her. And I was just a little girl. So yeah, I think that when for me, like, sitting in these spaces for others, I just, you know, try not to judge them. But I guess I don't know. Those aren't really the people that I'm judging. Like the broken,
Well, I just mean,
society, or like,
yeah.
that's my.
I just, yeah. I just want to clarify. I mean, like, I'm sitting there and I'm not looking at them as going, oh, like other people would be of saying, oh, you're in this industry. Oh, you're doing this. Oh, you did this. It's
Right.
like they get enough of that judgment everywhere. It's like, no, I don't look at them as that. And I just listen, and I feel like, I don't, either, I'm not one of those that walks in the room and is like, hey, here I am, come talk to me. I will sit and people just come to me and talk. And I think that's the gift of the way shower, really, in all fairness, is our experiences will resonate out. We don't need like that resume or a poster or a flyer that says, hey, if you had this, come talk to me. It energetically goes out and people pick it up, and those that are ready come and talk. And, just like you're saying, they like to be seen, heard. And one thing that I will say that I think a lot of people overlook, and it's something that's been kind of downgraded over time through society, is when we use words like I appreciate you, or I'm grateful you're around. People are like, yeah, that just gets said, and then nothing ever happens because it's like, yeah, you say you appreciate, but then you disappear, or you're grateful and then you abandon what's
Mm,
going on. And then there are people, and I'm going to make an assumption here, like you and I, and when we say to somebody, hey, I appreciate you doing this, or I'm grateful you shared that with me, there's a genuine energy behind it that people are like, thank you. I needed that today. I needed to hear that today. It
mm,
doesn't come across as the emptiness. In other words, it comes across with a whole lot of, like you would say, experience behind it that's like, yeah, I get it. Even though you haven't told me a lot, I still get it. And I'm curious, in your growth and in everything, you talk about seeing different roles and seeing different things. What was it like, if you can share? And I do know all of this is ongoing. It's not a one and done kind of system.
yeah.
Sorry, folks. No magic pill to this work. But do you ever, take the time and go, I've forgiven myself and my, and I broke these patterns? Have you seen that part yet?
So I do forgiveness exercises where I write letters to myself. And I learned this from a Kuan Yin deck that I have, an oracle deck. And in one of the exercises is to like forgive yourself. So the person I am now, going back to my timeline and forgiving different points and aspects of myself. And that's an involving practice. And so when I do that, it's kind of sporadic. Another thing that I recently did a guided meditation with one of my teachers, and unexpectedly, one of my ancestors came through, my uncle Ronnie, who was my mom's twin brother. And so my mom had a really difficult childhood and upbringing. And so he was an addict, he was bisexual and HIV positive. And I think I only met him a couple of times. They were disconnected for years and years and years. While he was smoking crack with someone, and they like lit him on fire. So he died very tragically, right? But I didn't know him very well, didn't even go to his funeral. So he came to me, and this was probably, I don't even know, my time's so bad. It could have been a month ago. Within the last 2 months, this meditation took place. My time is so bad. So yeah.
Mine too. Don't feel bad. I am horrible with time.
So this is a really beautiful meditation practice for forgiveness. And so I was listening to my teacher, and she was guiding us through a meditation practice for forgiveness. And so he came to me, which was very unexpected. And he held my hand, and I was just seeing, in like, prior to this, the written exercise, the letter of forgiveness, it's like one facet, one version of myself at a time. I have done similar meditations with myself, forgiving myself at like certain times, like of a situation. But this was so powerful that it like unlocked, like simultaneously, almost like it was just so quick. So it was kind of like pulling out like a whole like deck of pictures and like experiences and download like do like psh, in my mind with my Uncle Ronnie holding his hand of all of these different versions of myself and situations. And I forgave myself with his support. And I've never done that with the assistance of an ancestor before, but it was also an unexpected experience. And I think that's really powerful when we are in our meditative state. And because of my continuous practice with meditation, the multi dimensions and the facets and the space that I can hold sometimes, 2 years ago, there's no way, I don't think I could have opened up that many dimensions and portals within myself to have a clearing like that in such a short amount of time. Usually it's going through one thing at a time. I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah, it's ongoing too. And I think as my consciousness grows and my awareness grows about myself, different things come in. So as we clear denser and heavier things, we make room for new things to arise within us. So new things come to the forefront, and sometimes it's as simple as, seeing like, oh, wow, like I was, and I don't mean to like brush this off because I try to be the best mom that I can, but it's like, oh wow, like I was really short with Asher, and not being able to show up for him the way that I needed to because like I was kind of stuck in that old mindset. So it's like sometimes things like that pop up for me and I have to like forgive myself, but also become conscious of. So it's like when these situations happen again, I'm not responding from a place of trigger. And that's something that's really, I think, valuable about this work because for my whole, essentially from my teenage years to my almost my 30s was like fucking one trigger. Like I was so unaware of a lot of times that I was triggered because I didn't understand that I was stressed and anxious and scared and frightened and agitated because something in my environment was triggering something from my childhood and I was trying to protect myself or I was having this experience or afraid that this would happen on a subconscious level. I didn't have that awareness or that ability to hold it. So with this work, you become more and more aware of your triggers. And it's kind of like with Eckhart Tolle's teachings, like when you start becoming the observer of your mind, the watcher, the witness of your mind, you keep practicing it. And it's like, we do this all the time where all of a sudden we're like, do, all of a sudden you come back and you're like, oh, and you're watching your thoughts. You're like, oh, like and this is one of his teachings that I learned from him as well. It's like, oh, okay, like you're in a bad mood, but you're like less reactive. And over time, you start recognizing I'm in the bad mood, and then you react less and less. And it's not about punishing yourself because you reacted this time. It's about trying to be less reactive and with practice that happens. And so that's what kind of a lot of this work does. It's not, like you said, it's not instantaneous. Like at least it hasn't been for me. I do believe in miracles. I do believe in the Holy Spirit. Oh, that's divine and good. I do believe in that. But in my work, I'm not Jesus, I don't have
Well,
those abilities.
yeah,
But I
but you gotta remember, even he like took, most of his life is not recorded, and what is recorded, like 40 days and 40 nights of dealing with something. So, yeah, it wasn't easy for him either. It wasn't a one and done for him either. So,
right. But yeah, basically I just we're like the torch bearers, like we're lighting the torch for others, and it's just by standing in that energetic signature, that frequency, that awareness, we're able to reflect back what people need to. And I'll finish it with this. I saw Eckhart Tolle last year in Miami, and I realized the next day I had a really powerful spiritual awakening and clearing with him in my energetic field. During the show of watching him, I was so irritated. Here I am seeing like this master, somebody I've loved and had an awakening with when I was like 19 years old, reading his book in a Thai restaurant, like love the man and respect him. But I'm like listening to him teach, and he had even said it early on, like, if you feel uncomfortable, you can leave. And what I hadn't realized is that he is just such a high level, like master, like like a magical wizard. Like, I'm not even kidding you, is that it was like he had penetrated my energetic field while simultaneously penetrating everybody else. So he was able to resonate and give each person exactly what they all needed, what we each needed as his students to go up that next level of awareness, that next level of consciousness. And the next day, I had a full sacral purge, a sexual trauma purge. And I was like laying with one of my teachers in the spirit realm, and I had my head on his lap. He's a Zen master, and he was holding me. Like, just, it was like, because of my childhood, it's mostly childhood trauma. So it's like I revert back to being a child, and he was like a grandfather, fatherly, like safe figure, you know? And then I look, and it's like Eckhart Tolle's face is a cloud, like smiling. And I was like, that motherfucking wizard. Like, he knew. And he had said things even during the show where I was like, it was like he was directly speaking to me. So he's probably he's like probably the highest level teacher I've sat with. And I sat with an Essene master who read my mind telepathically, was in the middle of a talk, turned and looked at me and told me he's not ready yet. When I was asking about, I wanted to work with this teacher who taught me a lot about spirituality and kind of led me on the path of the Essenes. So I started learning about the Essenes. And Dr. Cousins just looked at me, and he knew who I was talking about. And he had actually worked with this person. So it was one of his former students. And he was just like, he's not ready yet. He looked right at me, read my mind. So these teachers are just like, I want to hopefully grow to be like in the shadow of some of that level, you know?
You're not going to be in anyone's shadow. You're going to be up there on as your own self. Don't sell yourself short. But that being said, I know we are getting close on time, but I wanted to know if I could ask one question, and you can answer it shortly, or if it'll take too long, let me know. But we talk about inner child work, and we also talk about shadow work. Are the two ever intertwined in the same concept, or do you feel like inner child work is inner child work, shadow work is shadow work?
I think inner child work is the beginning of shadow work. So I think a lot of the traumas and the repressed emotions and belief systems were created mostly in childhood. And so when we work with our inner child and we become the channel to release those repressed emotions, and then we go back, and that's my saying is, you are coming to save you. I just got so tired of hearing no one's coming to save you. You know, so that's what you become, is you are coming to save you every time you sit with your inner child. And so then, like, what you recognize, like what I was saying earlier, like not wanting to be seen. So that's a shadow, you know? So it's like hiding because you don't want to be seen, or not using your voice because of the regular trauma, the habitual trauma experienced as a child. So that's a shadow, and that plays like a facet in this personality that's not my authentic self, right? So when we shine the light on our shadow, we begin exploring what that is and how we're becoming this facade, in order to, because realistically, like for me, I think the ego, well, I guess what you're saying to the law of one, the ego is one, the ego is part of us. And for me, the ego is like a version of us in armor that protected us and wants to continue to protect us. So it it's separate well, it's not separate. It's not as evolved as our awareness and consciousness is, but it can be. We just have to teach it. So like for me, ego death is really probably because of my trauma is too heavy for me. So I consider it like shedding, ego shedding. So our ego grows and evolves. So as we raise our consciousness, our ego's consciousness is raised as well. So, when we begin our inner child work or we begin our shadow work, I think it can go either way, because sometimes things are so repressed within people, or what they're experienced. Like, so perhaps nobody molested you or nobody physically abused you, right? So that person may think that they didn't have a traumatic childhood. Maybe their parents worked all of the time and didn't pay attention to them, or didn't even, have the ability to have conversations with them. So they were kind of always reflecting like, oh, mommy doesn't want to talk to me. I'm not good enough. But because they weren't physically abused or sexually abused, they may think that they didn't have a bad childhood or whatever. So they're kind of conditioned to what this normal thing is. And they think, oh, but maybe so whatever leads them in life and they begin their shadow work journey, then they might kind of go that way instead of jumping into the inner child work and evolving to the shadow work. They might start with the shadow work and then descending down into the child work. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does, and I'll just make one quick mention about the ego because that's a show in itself, or a series actually. That probably even couldn't be in a show, but my experience with the ego growing up was I would hear people talk about you need to destroy the ego to evolve and ascend. And so I was like constantly trying to figure out how do you destroy this thing that keeps coming back. And then somebody made a statement to me, and it kind of was like an epiphany to where my mind like went up and my relationship with the ego changed. And I looked at it and they said, the ego is your earth guide only. And so it helps you operate on the earth realm. When you leave the earth realm, it struggles because it has no reference. So
I like
that's
that.
why you have conflict with it. And it's like, and so, and then I was like, I started to realize, well, if it's an earth guide only and we're moving beyond and it's a part of us, so if we're changing, can it change? And that's where I'm at now, is trying to figure out how to morph ego out of ego status to where it's like the next level. And I don't even know what acronym you could give it, because it's like ego is so cool and so easy to say that it's like, yeah, a go ascension guide only. It's like, I don't know. That just seems like it would confuse people, though, if you say, yeah, you need to work on the go. It's like, what? But
I don't know if it has anything to do with being that thought, like that witness. So, like, as these thoughts and emotions or triggers come up, the stronger you are in that witness, and able to identify as being the witness and the aware, that you are the aware, the consciousness behind that thought. So you're like watching it happen. That's kind of, you're watching like the ego or the trigger or the experience or the emotion that's arising happen, and you're that person. You're that consciousness watching it and observing it. So I don't know if that's like would have something to do with that type of practice, kind of basing that to go deeper into levels of separation of recognizing like ego or whatever, if that's what you're talking about.
yeah, that totally makes sense. And yeah, and if you're open to it, we should totally do a show on ego, because I feel like both of us have really great insights into it. But we are approaching the hour, and if
Thank
you would
you.
like, I know we agreed to an hour, but if you have a few extra minutes, I want to give you the chance to talk about your work, your books, and your practice, if you would like.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that, because I was worried that this would be a lot. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm the creator of A Journey Within, and I do have a free integration journal, which is great for spiritual awakenings, plant medicine integration, meditation integration. I think it's like almost 10 pages of prompts. So it really helps you dive deep and kind of forces you to look at things with a different perspective and allows different perspectives to arise. So if you do have a spiritual awakening or a meditative practice and something arises and you don't know how to, like, what's going on. And also a lot of times with spiritual awakenings and even plant medicine ceremonies and integration is really tough, because you've had this significantly strong experience or otherworldly experience. And you're like, how do I, bring that down into my life and still function and not, become this person where it's like, things don't matter. I don't need to work. None of this matters.
Yeah.
And I had that spiritual psychosis for almost a year, but I kind of knew something was up. And I was just I was in so much fear that I wouldn't tell people what was really going on. It was like I was sitting in a room with somebody and like 5 different things were going on for me. But yeah, and then so a couple of my offerings are I have a um, video recorded meditation, a journey within, which is my signature meditation. And that is a guide where I guide you to Mother Earth, the inner child, and your ancestors. So this is something that, you know, the more you practice it, the deeper your experiences with that will be. And it's really gentle. And then I have a couple of free meditations on YouTube available that are kind of similar to that. And then right now I have a new product. It's called Rooted and Rising, which I'm really excited to share with people. It's only $44 and it's a curated guided meditation with a questionnaire. So there's specific shadows. And of course, if there's a shadow on there that somebody doesn't see that they want to work on, you know, they could email that to me. And of course, I'd make room for that. But so there's a list of shadows that they choose from, and then there's like an in-depth questionnaire so I can get some information about them. So then I go through that and then my own meditative process to create a meditation specifically for them to help them with that experience. So it's about working through that shadow. And then, so that's the rooted part, descending into it and doing all the work. And then the rising part. So you're rising out of that and you're rising in your awareness and your consciousness. And it's just such a beautiful product. I'm really excited about it. So yeah.
And so where can people find it?
Oh yeah. So my website is stasiawysote.com. I also do private one-on-one sessions. I'm taking a break from the single sessions right now. So I'm just kind of referring people to Rooted and Rising, which I think is a great entry-level price right there. So it's $44, $17 for the guided meditation. And then I do packages for one-on-one sessions. They're both 4-week programs. So one is once a week and one is twice a week if you need more support. And then there's details about that on my website as well. So that's for somebody who really wants to do like intensive shadow work and they need a lot of support and like intensive child work, inner child work.
Thank you. And so I actually have a message for you.
Yeah.
From my heart and the heart of my shows to you, thank you for what you're doing for humanity. It's seen, felt, heard, and thank you for being authentically you and being the phoenix and the way shower.
Thank you. That's so sweet.
And so everyone that's watching, thank you as well. And do follow her and do go to 5D Healerverse because we can be found there as well. And shout out to Trisha who put us together. And did I just say Trisha? Because her name is Trish. And where Trisha came from, I don't know. I think like you, I think this hour was more than an hour in a hour format. And I'm like, wow.
It's a lot of info.
Yeah. I think my brain is still trying to process a lot of what you were sharing with me, and so that was weird. And I am so sorry, Trish, that I called you Trisha. But that being said, do like, subscribe, follow along, and you never know. She may be having another appearance on this show. That's kind of up to her, and so I would welcome her back anytime.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
All right. Well, I had to think for a second because I'm used to doing shows at night and it's afternoon. So
wait, I forgot.
Go for it.
Every Wednesday, I teach in-person classes at Herbs and Earth in West Palm Beach. I've been facilitating meditations there since the beginning of January. It's a great place. It's only $10. Amy, the owner, she has like a whole apothecary of herbs and teas. And so, you can come early, have a cup of tea, and then we get into it. We do the guided meditation. And then following that, we do a sacred share with no crosstalk. So each person has the opportunity to share their experience. And it's amazing. People cry. You don't have to, but lots of people cry. It's beautiful.
No, crying's good, and that's something that we need to re-script, that crying is bad. No, crying is good.
Right.
Crying is healing. And so my friend Julia in the UK says Trisha is the UK version of Trish. So there you go. And
Awesome.
so blessings to you and blessings to your family. Thank you so much for sharing who you are with the world. And
Thank
with
you.
that, I'm going to say good afternoon to everyone. Make it a fun start of the week and have a fun summer. And we'll see you on the next episode. Bye bye, everyone.